You wake up in the dark. Your eyes are open. You know exactly where you are. That's your ceiling. That's the gap in the curtains where the streetlight gets in. You're thinking clearly, wide awake, all of it sharp. And you go to sit up and nothing happens. Not your arms, not your legs, not a single finger. You tell your hand to move, and your hand does not move. It's not stuck under a blanket. It's not asleep in that pins and needles way. You have simply lost the connection. Like the wire between your brain and your body has been quietly unplugged while you slept. Then you notice the weight. Something is pressing down on your chest. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Like a person has sat down on you and has no intention of getting off. You try to pull in a full breath, and you can't. The air comes in thin. And then, because some animal part of you already knows to look, you turn your eyes toward the door. And there's someone standing in it. You can't see a face, just a shape, darker than the dark around it, tall and still. It isn't moving. It isn't leaving. It's just standing there, at the foot of your bed, watching you not be able to move. You are, at this exact moment, completely awake. Okay, freeze it there, because I want to be very clear about something before we go one step further. Nothing that just happened to you is a nightmare, and nothing that just happened to you means there's anything wrong with you. Every single piece of it, the paralysis, the weight, the figure in the doorway, is real. It's documented, and it has a name. It's called sleep paralysis. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand almost all of it. I say almost because there's one part of this that scientists genuinely still argue about. We'll get there. But let's take the whole thing apart in the order you just felt it. Start with the part that scares people the most. You woke up and you couldn't move. Here's what you have to know first. Your body being paralyzed while you sleep isn't the glitch. That's the normal part. That's supposed to happen. Every night, for a chunk of the night, you drop into a stage of sleep called REM, which is short for rapid eye movement. That's the stage where you do your most vivid dreaming. Your eyes actually flick around under the closed lids, like you're watching the dream. Your brain lights up almost like it's awake, and you dream in full color and full story. And here's the problem your body has to solve. If your brain is running a dream where you're sprinting down a street or throwing a punch, and your body actually did what the dream told it to, you'd hurt yourself. You'd leap out of bed and run into a wall. So your brain doesn't allow it. The moment you enter REM, it flips a switch that essentially cuts the line to your muscles. It relaxes your whole body into a kind of soft lockdown, so that no matter what you dream, you lie there perfectly still. Scientists call it REM atonia. Atonia just means loss of muscle tone, no tension, no movement. It's a safety feature. It runs every night of your life and you never notice it because you're asleep for it. Sleep paralysis is what happens when the timing goes wrong. Normally the switch flips off before you wake up. Your muscles get the line back and then your mind surfaces, and everything's connected by the time you open your eyes. In sleep paralysis, the order gets scrambled. Your mind wakes up first while that switch is still on. So there you are, fully conscious, thinking clearly, aware of your own bedroom, and your body is still in the lockdown it's supposed to be in during a dream. You're awake inside a body that's still asleep. That's it. That's the paralysis. It isn't a force holding you down. It's a safety feature that ran a few seconds late. Now, the weight on your chest. This one has been scaring people for so long that it's actually baked into our language. The word nightmare doesn't come from bad dreams in general. It comes from an old idea of a creature, a mare, that climbs onto a sleeper in the dark and sits on them, crushing the breath out of them. Night plus mare. A thing that sits on your chest at night. People needed a word for this specific feeling thousands of years ago, so they made one. And the feeling is real, even though the creature isn't. Here's where it comes from. During REM sleep, the way you breathe changes. Your breathing goes shallow and automatic, and you lose most of your voluntary control over it, the same way you've lost control of the rest of your muscles. When you're properly asleep, that's fine. You don't notice. But in sleep paralysis, you're awake for it. You're lying there, conscious, trying to take a big, calming, deliberate breath, and your body won't give you one. Because deliberate breathing is exactly the kind of muscle control that's been switched off. Your chest feels tight and heavy and unresponsive, and your awake brain, looking for an explanation, lands on the most obvious one a human can imagine. Something heavy is sitting on me. Something is pressing down. It's not. It's the same lockdown felt from the inside of your own ribs. Now the part you saw. The figure in the doorway. Remember, a second ago, your brain was in REM, the dreaming stage. It was generating dream imagery, vivid, detailed, emotional, the whole picture show. When you snap awake into sleep paralysis, that image machine doesn't just cleanly switch off. For a little while, it keeps running. But now your eyes are open, so the dream has nowhere to play except on top of the actual room in front of you. Your brain paints the dream onto your bedroom. These are called hypnagogic hallucinations, and that's the last piece of jargon I'll ask you to hang on to. Hypnagogic just means happening in that borderland between being asleep and being awake. They're hallucinations in the strict sense. You really are seeing something that isn't there, but they're not a sign that something's broken in you. They're dream footage bleeding into an open-eyed, awake mind. Shadows that shift, shapes in the corner, a person standing at the foot of the bed. You're not imagining the figure. You are genuinely seeing it. It's just being generated by the same part of you that was, moments ago, directing a dream. So that's 3 of the 4 things you felt, and all 3 have clean, boring, physical answers. You couldn't move because a safety switch ran late. Your chest felt crushed because you couldn't control your own breathing. You saw a figure because a dream was still playing with the lights on. But there's a 4th thing, and this is the one I have to be honest with you about. It's not what you saw. It's what you felt. That specific bone-deep certainty that the figure in the doorway is a someone, and that the someone means you harm. Researchers have a name for it. They call it the sensed presence. And it's strange because it's separate from the seeing. People who see nothing at all in the room still report it. This flat, total conviction that they are not alone, and that whatever's with them is hostile. Back in 1999, a group of researchers went through thousands of these experiences and found they sort neatly into 3 families. There's the pressure and suffocation, the chest thing. There's another one we're going to come back to at the very end, because it's the strangest of the lot. And then there's this one, the intruder, the sensed presence, the fear, the shapes in the dark. Of the 3, the intruder is the one science has the hardest time fully explaining. And to see why it's such a puzzle, you have to look at who shows up in that doorway. Because it's not just your doorway, it's everyone's. Go to Newfoundland, off the east coast of Canada, and people there have talked for generations about the old hag. You wake in the night, you can't move, and a witch-like figure is crouched on your chest, pinning you down. They even had a verb for it, to be hagged. It wasn't a bad dream to them. It was a thing that happened to you in your bed. Go to Japan, and there's a word, kanashibari. It comes from an old term that means to be bound in metal, tied down in chains you can't see. Same setup. You wake, you're pinned, you can't move, and there's a presence. Go to a region of Italy, and you'll find the Pandafeche, described in different tellings as an evil witch or a ghost or sometimes a monstrous cat that comes at night and holds you down and presses on you. Newfoundland, Japan, Italy. People who never met, never traded these stories, never read each other's folklore. And they all independently came up with the same nighttime experience. You're awake, you can't move, something is on your chest, something is in the room, and it wishes you ill. And it goes back centuries. In 1781, a painter named Henry Fuseli made a picture called The Nightmare. If you've never seen it, look it up after this, because it'll stop you. A woman is thrown back across a bed, fast asleep, and squatting right on top of her chest is a small, hunched, grinning demon staring out at you. In the shadows behind them, a horse pushes its blind-eyed head through the curtains. Fuseli painted that over 200 years ago, before anyone knew a thing about REM sleep or brain chemistry. He just painted what the experience feels like from the inside, and people recognized it instantly. It made him famous. Here's the part I find genuinely hard to shake. A folklorist named David Hufford spent years studying this, and he found something that should not be possible if these were just scary stories getting passed around. He found people who had never heard of the old hag, who didn't grow up with any of these legends, who had no cultural script for it at all. And they reported the exact same thing. The paralysis, the pressure on the chest, the presence in the room. Same details, no shared story to copy from, which flips the whole thing on its head. We used to assume the folklore came first and shaped the experience, that people got spooked because they'd been told about witches and demons. It looks like it's the other way around. The experience came first. The physiology is producing a strange but remarkably consistent template. The same one, in the same shape, in every human head. And then each culture walks up to that template and gives it a name and a backstory. Japan called it a spirit binding you in chains. Italy called it a witch. Fuseli called it a demon. But nobody invented the thing in the doorway. It was already there. The same for all of them. Waiting. So here's the honest, open question, the part I told you we'd get to. Science can explain cleanly why you can't move. It can explain why your chest feels crushed. It can even explain why you're seeing a figure at all. What it cannot fully explain is why the figure feels like that. Why a person and not a chair or a tree or nothing? Why always menacing and almost never kind? Why the same hostile intruder turns up in a bedroom in Tokyo and a bedroom in rural Newfoundland with no line connecting them? There are theories, and they're good ones. The leading idea is that when you wake up trapped and unable to move, an ancient part of your brain, a threat detection system built to keep you alive, switches into overdrive. It's screaming that you're in danger because from its point of view, you're pinned and defenseless in the dark. But there's nothing actually there for it to point at. So, the theory goes, your mind does what minds do with a fire alarm and no fire. It builds a source. It reaches into that still-running dream imagery and assembles an intruder to explain the terror you're already feeling. The fear comes first. The figure is your brain giving the fear a face. That's the best explanation we've got, and it might be right. But notice, it's still a story we're telling to cover a gap, not a closed case. Why the sensed presence takes the exact shape it does across every culture on Earth is one of those places where the honest answer is that we're still working on it. Okay, take a breath, a real one, because I don't want to leave you scared of your own bedroom. Let me tell you the reassuring part, because there's a lot of it. Sleep paralysis is harmless. It feels like the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and it will not hurt you. Your breathing is fine the whole time, even when it doesn't feel fine. Nobody has ever been physically injured by the paralysis itself. And it's brief. Most episodes last somewhere between a few seconds and a couple of minutes, and then the switch flips off the way it was always going to, and you can move. And it's over. It's also incredibly common. This is not some rare affliction. When researchers pooled together dozens of studies covering tens of thousands of people, they found that around 1 in 12 people will have at least one episode of sleep paralysis in their life. Among students, it's closer to 1 in 4. So if this has happened to you, you are in enormous company, most of whom were too unsettled to ever mention it to anyone. We even know what makes it more likely. Being badly short on sleep is a big one. So is sleeping on your back, jet lag, wildly irregular sleep schedules, high stress. Basically, anything that shoves your sleep cycle out of its normal rhythm makes a scrambled handoff more likely. And if you're ever in it, there's a trick. Don't try to throw your whole body up at once, because your whole body is exactly what's switched off, and fighting it just feeds the panic. Instead, aim small. Try to move one finger, or one toe, or just wiggle your eyes and focus on slowing your breathing down. Concentrating everything on one tiny movement at the edge of your body is often enough to nudge the system back online, and the whole thing releases. So that's sleep paralysis. The most frightening thing your own brain will ever do to you, and it turns out to be one of the most ordinary. A safety switch, a few seconds out of sync. That's the whole monster. Except, remember I said those experiences sort into 3 families, and I was saving the third one? Here it is. Because for some people, it doesn't end with being pinned to the bed. For some people, that's where it starts. They're lying there, frozen, and then they feel themselves get lighter, and then they feel themselves lift. They feel themselves rise up off the mattress, drift toward the ceiling and turn around and look down. And there, on the bed below them, is their own body, still lying there, still asleep. Most people who feel that spend the rest of their lives hoping it never happens again. But a few people feel it and want to go back. They think they've slipped loose of the body, that they've been somewhere, and they spend years learning how to do it on purpose, on command, wide awake. They've been writing about it for thousands of years. They have techniques and traditions and a name for it. They call it astral projection. And that's where we're going next.